Excellent. All right. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, why not?
Cool. Welcome to Hacks and Jacks. It's Sunday, June 8th. We're recording Sunday night. The Yankees and Red Sox are in the middle of the last game of the evening, and it's been an absolutely wonderful baseball weekend. Scott, how are things on your end? And what did you do this weekend that was fun?
Tigers won a series. What do I care? Right? Everything else can go to heck. But hey, Tigers won a series.
Yeah, Detroit looked really good against the Cubbies. That a lot of people were saying that maybe that's the World Series preview. I don't know. Felt like playoff baseball. Felt like playoff atmosphere, and the Tigers come away with 2 out of 3. So it was fun.
Yeah. Did you know that Pete Crow Armstrong is just good all the time? Like that we were all wrong about everything about Pete Crow. Like the number of people that projected him to be a top 50 hitter is 0. Right? Like just to be clear, this isn't like one of those situations where we're like, oh yeah, this guy could be really good, but we're not sure. This was literally like, we think he could be a 15 home run hitter with like 25 stolen bases, and that'd be an awesome outcome. Right? Or like maybe even 15 home runs and 30 stolen bases. And now he has 17 and 21 today. It's wild. Like he could take a big step back and still be like a 25 to 30 home run, 40 to 45 stolen base kind of guy. And like, forget what you think about batting average. Like it doesn't really matter because he could just be that good. And all of us are just kind of like, everyone asked me like, oh, what happened with Pete Armstrong? Like, I don't know. He's good now. Right. Like, I guess he's really good now. Like there's not, projecting baseball players doesn't usually work like this, right? Like there's no projection that's going to be like there's projections out there that are like, yeah, we projected that there was like a 1 in, 15, 1 in 20 chance that this happened, but none of them are going to put that as their projection for what happens with a player. And on one hand, you could be like, well, the projections are wrong. I guess the projections don't know anything. It's like, well, here's the thing. They were pretty good about 80% of players, but about 20% of players, projections are just going to miss on. One of them was Pete Crow Armstrong, and they missed in the best possible way. So if you have Pete Crow Armstrong, just enjoy it. Don't be like, well, what should I trade him for? Nothing. No, you should just hold him. Because, like, what if this is real? What if this is just something we never could have possibly projected? Right? Like, that's a very real thing at this point. So just hold and enjoy. Right? Like, that's the thing that always kills me. Like, oh, well, none of the projections thought he'd be this good, so should I trade him now? No, at this point, you just hold. You hold and say, can you believe it? Right? Just like enjoy this good thing that happened in baseball.
Yeah. Pete Crow Armstrong is what fantasy pundits wanted Lawrence Butler to be in the worst way. Like, that's kind of how it feels. Is it like, we wanted Lawrence Butler to have this huge, like 30-30 type breakout season, and it was PCA instead, which, I mean, it happens.
Yeah. And like, even then it's like, we had a decent day from Lawrence Butler today, and we're kind of hoping that he'll end the season like 2020, which is kind of what he did last year, but with like fewer games. But even then it's like, whatever. If you have a guy that's like this, that's like doing something that none of us could have possibly dreamed about, you can think about what you're trading for. And if you want to do that, I'm not going to stop you. I'm just saying no one really knows what to trade you for Pete Crow Armstrong right now. No one has any idea, because he might well be like, there's nothing like unluck. Like, this profile is not driven by luck. It's not like, oh, wow, it's so weird. He's way overperforming his metrics. That's not what's happening. Like, it all looks pretty legit. And on one hand, it's like, well, this is just a hot streak to end all hot streaks. You can't really argue for or against that. With Pete Crow Armstrong, you're just like, yeah, like he's doing way better than any of us imagined. And we're like, not super sure why. So just enjoy it. For me, he's this weird position of like, he's a hold and also don't sell. Because unless someone's giving you like another top 15, 20 hitter, right out the gate to be like, oh yeah, I'll give you Juan Soto for Pico Armstrong. Yeah, go ahead and do that. But outside of that, like any reasonable offer, you shouldn't take. You should see if Pico Armstrong's legit.
Well, speaking of bats that have exceeded expectations this week, we're going to get into a couple of those, especially with Cal Raleigh out in Seattle. But that's another issue for another time. We'll get to that later. Let's get into our news and notes. We'll start with who's back from the injured list, and a couple of elite level fantasy names coming back. On the offensive side, we have Los Angeles Angels outfielder Mike Trout and New York Yankees infielder Jazz Chisholm, both returning from injuries, and they're going right back in fantasy starting lineups, right, Scott?
Yeah, like what? Like if you held them this whole time, it was because you planned on putting them in and not really thinking about it. So Jazz Chisholm Jr. is still a top 12 third baseman in fantasy as of right now. In terms of actual production, not like in terms of like what we think they could be, like actual production, he's still there because he still has 7 home runs on the season, not counting today's action. He still has like all these counting stats. It's still a great park for him. It's still a great park for his teammates. Like, I mean, no, I'm sorry. He has 9 home runs, 9 stolen bases. Like, what are you doing? Like, just put him in. Just put him in. He's a stud. And then with Mike Trout, like, sure, he doesn't run quite like you'd like him to, but with Mike Trout, he's still hitting the ball really, really hard. He's hitting a bunch of home runs as he has for the last, like across the last 3 seasons. Like, yes, there's a bunch of injuries between all of his playing time over the last 3 seasons, but he's still hitting a boatload of home runs. So many home runs that you really shouldn't worry about it, right? Like, oh, he didn't steal as much. His batting average is lower. And he's going to hit potentially 40 home runs if he plays the rest of the year, right? Like, let that go. Let that be a fact, right? Batting average, especially in weekly leagues, is the flukiest stat there is on the hitting side. It's like that, then stolen bases, then everything else. Just let him be what he is, which right now is a premier power hitter with a lower average than we're used to.
Well, we'll stick in the outfield. We've got 3 interesting names, maybe not at that elite level, but certainly at the replacement level or competent level. Minnesota Twins outfielder Byron Buxton, Baltimore Orioles Colton Cowser, and Detroit Tigers Parker Meadows all coming back this week as well. Of those 3, which is the most interesting to you? And don't just say Parker Meadows because he's a Tiger. I heard your podcast last week with Huth.
I really wish it was Parker Meadows, who has some speed, has some pop, who's really interesting. I think the correct answer is actually Byron Buxton, who, look, injuries are a concern, but when he plays, he's very good, even though the strikeout rate gets out of control, even though he doesn't walk a lot. Byron Buxton right now has 10 home runs, 10 steals in 48 games, not including today where he had 3 more walks and an RBI. Look, Byron Buxton still has pop, still has some speed, playing for a team that needs to do a lot to really stay in the race in the AL Central. I think he's someone that could very well be a 25 home run, 20 stolen base guy with like a 260 average-ish, which is mostly what he has, even if things don't work out exactly the way you hope with injury. Look, he only has to play 110 games to get to those levels I was talking about, which, to be fair, he hasn't actually gotten to since 2017. That was the last time he played at least 95 games. I'm sorry, at least 110 games. He played 102 last year. He got 18 home runs. Look, Byron Buxton does things when he's healthy that are worth just holding on to. As far as the other guys, Parker Meadows should be an everyday player, and he sort of has been so far. The Tigers have played, 5 righties in the last 6 games. And in the 5 times that they've played a righty, Parker Meadows has been the leadoff hitter for an offense that is struggling a little bit, but isn't like totally inept. So he's like mildly interesting. I think the guy that worries me the most is Colton Cowser. And that's just because I don't know what role he truly has on this team. Like, so far, he's hit 6th, in the games that he's been back. He played, he did play against 2 lefties, which was a big deal, and he's playing fairly well. I don't see a path back to leadoff spot. Even though he hasn't been great, I do think Jackson Holiday can run away with that job. And even if he doesn't, by the time they decide they don't want Jackson Holiday, Cedric Mullins will probably be back, and they might look at him for the leadoff job. So I think Colton Cowser is going to be like a middle of the lineup kind of guy at best. Maybe like top of the bottom third sort of guy. And that impact, so like a big part of his fantasy value is being a leadoff guy. Colton Cowser has plenty of power. His plate discipline's not great, right? So like as of right now, he's striking out 27.8% of the time, walking 5.6%. Granted, that's only in 36 plate appearances. Colton Cowser, his real upside came from being like a leadoff guy, being a guy who was like going to be at the top of this lineup all the time. As like a middle bottom of the order guy, there's a lot more volatility in the profile for Colton Cowser. I think he's fine rostering if you're in like a 12 teamer with 5 outfielders, but if you're in like a 12 teamer with 3 outfielders, there may be other options that just have like better opportunities than Colton Cowser has right now. But again, this could all change, if they decide they don't want Jackson Holiday leading off anymore, they want to go with Colton. If Colton Cowser gets back to the leadoff spot or starts hitting fourth or something like that, like then he becomes a lot more interesting. But current state where he's going to sit once in a while and he only bats 6th, Colton Cowser is like I guess if you want to shoot for upside, last outfielder in a 4 or 5 outfielder 12-team league.
Well, we've got one more very interesting name coming off the IL this week. Probably the hottest hitter in baseball, not named Cal Raleigh. And that's Christian Encarnacion Strand, the Cincinnati Reds infielder. He's been back for 2 days. He's played 3 games. He's homered in all 3 games, including one today. Just absolutely on fire coming off the injured list. And we have a question in the chat. Is Christian Encarnacion Strand a must-add in all formats, in some formats? Usually probably just first base eligible, though he did get a start at third base today. So we'll see how quickly he gains that kind of eligibility. What are your thoughts on Encarnacion Strand?
So yeah, especially if he brought third base eligibility over from last year, he is definitely one of those guys. So like that, he didn't really play any of it last year. But if he's already got it for whatever reason in a league you play in now, I think he has a chance to get it within the next 2 weeks. But even with the depth at first base, Christian Encarnacion Strand, he's going to be the feature in the hitter list coming up on this coming Wednesday. He's a guy who, look, he's had some problems. He looked terrible to start the year, but he was great in the minors in his rehab assignments. It's something where really like he struggled to get the ball in the air as often as he needed to. He struggled to really like do some of the things he needed to, but he looks great. He looks like he's a power hitter and a very friendly offense at home. The strikeout rate is down. The walk rate isn't good, but it's not, it doesn't really matter. A player like him in his ballpark just needs to be hitting home runs. Yeah. Is he a must add? Not if you've already got first base all set, since you probably can't hit him at third, at first base. If you've already got, let's say you early in the season added Torque and Soderstrom, you don't have to be the one that adds Christian Encarnacion Strand, but somebody in your league probably needs a first baseman, and that person should be adding Christian Encarnacion Strand. Just see what happens, right? They stuck him in at, hitting 4th for each of the last 2 days, Saturday and Sunday against righties, even though he's a righty. So like that's probably as low as he'll be in the lineup in the short term. He's worth grabbing if you need a burst at power, if you need a burst at first base. He's played third base each of the last 2 days. So that means if you're in a Yahoo league, give it another 2 or 3 days, he may be eligible at third base. He's worth grabbing just in case you need power in third base. I'm not saying he's a must add, right? Because if you're already set at first and or third and corner, don't worry about it. He's not someone that's like going to be better than some of the top 10 to 15 options of that position for now. But in the short term, if you've just been dying at those positions, you've had no one to turn to, he is absolutely probably the most appealing option off the wire.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about more news and notes on Hacks and Jacks. Welcome back to Hacks and Jacks on Pitcher List. I'm Brett Ford. He's Scott Chu. We're talking news and notes, and we're going to take a look at some names who went on the IL this week. We'll start in Philadelphia. First baseman Bryce Harper with a quick injury to his wrist. He's sitting out quickly on the 10-day IL. We lose Harper this week. We lose Athletics catcher Shea Langoliers, Colorado shortstop Ezequiel Tovar, and we might be without Seattle outfielder Julio Rodriguez. He got drilled by a line drive yesterday. Haven't seen any news whether he's been placed on the IL or not. Scott, what are those impacts, especially with Harper and Rodriguez? Scott, I think you're muted, buddy.
Yeah. So if you've got Julio Rodriguez, you've got Bryce Harper, I think you've just got to hold on to them and make room on your IL. There's probably someone else with less upside on your IL that you're going to need to let go of. I think the interesting name for me actually is Ezequiel Tovar, because he continues to do all the things that we wanted him to do coming into the season. So after the end of last season, there's a lot of talk about how Ezequiel Tovar really overperformed, and it was true, right? He was better than we expected him to be. He did better than his plate discipline suggested he should be, but he's been better at all that stuff this year, right? Like everything he's doing for Ezequiel Tovar has just been exactly what we wanted him to do. It's a real bummer that he continues to be hurt, but he's a guy who, look, you may not be able to hold him because, it's an oblique. We don't know how long it's going to last. But guys, when he's been on the field, he's doing exactly what we want. He's striking out way less. He's putting the ball in play. He's going to hit near the top of the lineup when he's healthy. So once Ezequiel Tovar comes back, he might get cut. If you don't already roster him, expect him to get cut over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Go ahead and scoop him up if you can. Try to hold on to him. I think there's real potential to be the same quality of hitter he was last season with better ratios, and people will ignore it because he keeps getting hurt. And last year, coming into this year, we all said, oh yeah, this is a bust. This is a bust. He strikes out too much. He never walks. You can't sustain that. He made all the changes we wanted him to make. And the only thing that's held him back is being healthy, right? He hits the ball hard more often. All the expected stats are better. All the StatCast stuff is better. All the batted ball quality stuff is better. Ezequiel Tovar is going to be very useful to you as we go throughout the season. Just give it some time. The problem is he's been injured. I don't know when he'll be back, but when he does come back, if he's available in your league, I think you should go scoop him up. I think there's a very solid shortstop there for you, especially if you don't already have one.
Well, let's stop talking about injured guys. There's been too many injuries in baseball this week between, these 4 hitters and then all the pitchers that have suffered injuries. It's so hard to stash and keep, an active bench when you've got so many gosh darn injuries. And speaking from experience, my TGFBI team is suffering from that this week. So I won't get into it, but injuries suck. Turn them off. Let's talk about some guys that got called up to the majors, and obviously the big name is Jack Caglione out in Kansas City. I know you and Trevor talked in depth about him last week. Anything you want to add about Jack Caglione before we move on to a couple other prospects?
Yeah, so the early results aren't great, although he did have a really nice 4-for-4 day today. Look, the reality is all that matters is he's hitting the ball hard, right? He comes up. The expected stats look great. Like, yeah, it's an 0.95 average, but the expected batting average, 292 per StatCast. The exit velocity is above 90%. The hard hit rate's above 50%. He's doing all the things we want him to do. Sure, the results aren't there, but just wait, right? It's an extremely small sample as of now. He's hitting the ball hard. It's not like he's hitting a million ground balls. He's hitting more ground balls than we'd like, but that's not something that's really been a huge issue for him in the minor leagues. Just give him a moment. I think he'll get there. He's definitely got a hold. Now, Nick Kurtz also coming back this week. I like Nick Kurtz more than I like Jack Caglione, but that was true like before Jack Caglione got called up. I think they're both very valuable first base prospects, especially if you missed out on Spencer Torkelson and Tyler Soderstrom and all those guys. If you've like maybe been holding Ben Rice, who's running out of playing time, who's likely to run into even less playing time with Giancarlo Stanton coming up. These are, Nick Kurtz and then Jack Caglione in that order are guys I would definitely be looking at to maybe shore up that position, right? But, just keep an eye on it. Don't worry about the slow starts. They could have very high upside. You should just kind of hold, wait, see what happens. There's a lot of upside there. Way more so than I think some of the back end first basemen you're going to see hot on the wire at any given time.
Well, let's shift to the other side of the infield. Third base shortstop, New York Mets infielder Ronnie Mauricio is an interesting name, more for kind of the power speed build than just strictly power, but had a decent day yesterday with a home run. Haven't checked the Mets box score yet for Sunday afternoon, but Ronnie Mauricio, any interest there to fill maybe, a shallow third base position?
Yeah, sure. I mean, he had 2 hits today, 2 runs, a stolen base, 2 walks. Got on base a lot. The strikeouts are not too out of control for Ronnie Mauricio. Look, he made the list as a guy who has plenty of talent. He's missed a ton of time. He missed all of 2024. We didn't get to see him a ton in the major leagues in 2023. There's upside here, but not like so much upside that it's just like a hold and wait. Like he's not at the level anymore of like a Kurtz or something like that. But, the hit tool's got some growth, but he's got pop. He's got speed. I think in a deeper league, like a 15-teamer, you might as well scoop him up and see what happens, right? In a 12-teamer, there's probably better options in the middle infield. But as of now, and a 15-teamer, go ahead, grab Mauricio, see what happens. And then a week from now, be ready to think about who else is on the wire to see if there's any better options.
Yeah, I got to correct myself a little bit here. He has played third base and shortstop for the Mets, but he is only second base eligible in NFBC formats for now. So take that with a grain of salt. And then we move on to Chicago White Sox catcher Kyle Teel. The White Sox have completely leaned into the youth movement at catcher, at least. Now, after sending down Corey Lee, their only active catchers on the roster are Edgar Caro and Kyle Teel, who was the centerpiece of the Garrett Crochet trade. What have you seen from Teel, and what do you know about this elite hitting prospect?
I mean, what have we seen from him? We've seen 8 plate appearances, which is cool, right? But it's not as though he's hit for any power. I think he was more renowned for his defense than he was his offense. Although, I guess the real carrying two for Teel is power. But look, here's the thing with catchers. It's a real steep learning curve. If you play fantasy football, it's just like tight ends. They need to learn 2 ends of a position that are both difficult defensively and offensively. I'm not super interested in Teel anywhere but 2 catcher deep leagues, 15-teamers who get playing time, but that's really about it as far as what you can expect from a production standpoint. I think in a 12-teamer, you should just keep moving on. There's too many good catchers to care about Kyle Teel, but if you're in a 2-team league or in a 2-catcher league, go ahead, scoop him, see if that power turns into anything. I expect it to be, like many other catchers who come up as rookies, a low batting average, high strikeout kind of thing. Yeah, sure. In the minors, he walked a lot. Maybe he'll walk a lot now. So in an OBP, he'll be slightly better, but asking a rookie catcher to have a slugging over 400 is just really, really difficult. We just don't see it that often because it's just that hard to make that transition from there. Learn your major league catching staff and learn how to hit major league pitching. That's just too tough.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be called upon to play catcher as much as Teel is. Maybe Agustin Ramirez in Miami might be the exception to that deal because he's going to be, hitting as the DH more often than not, or at least more often than Teel likely will be. Like you said, Teal's kind of renowned for his defense more than anything. So, like you said, hard to manage pitching staff, hard to come in and really hit the ground running with the bat when you're also managing pitchers. And of course, in Chicago, maybe he has an advantage because a lot of those guys are kind of AAA, 4A arms that maybe Teel has some experience with previously. So We'll see. We'll see how he does. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back. We'll jump into Scott's top 150 hitters list, the risers and fallers, after this break. All right. Taking a quick look at the guys that I have. You're good with those 8 or 9 names? Cool.
Sure. I definitely looked at them.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too many surprises. I mean, if you remember kind of what you did from Wednesday, Thursday, you should be fine.
I don't, but let's do it.
Welcome back to Hacks and Jacks. I'm Brett Ford at Fade That Man on social media. He's Scott Chu at If the Shoe Fits, CHUFITS. Scott, let's get into your top 150 hitters list. We've got some risers, and we're starting in Seattle with perhaps the most meteoric rise in fantasy baseball this year. The big dumper, Cal Raleigh, tier 3. He's spot 16. He's up 7 positions from last week. Talk to me about Cal Raleigh and his incredible offensive couple of weeks.
Shout out to my buddy Sam. He's been on Cal Raleigh, the big dumper, for years. He probably doesn't listen to this, but he knows who I'm talking about. So with Cal Raleigh, I mean, how many catchers can hit 40 home runs? You know, we've talked a lot about catchers and how that position's really gotten a lot deeper, you know, especially if you've been someone that's been in on Adley Rutschman or, you know, some of the old guard like JT Realmuto. They've really sort of blended into the sort of like the regular mass at that position. Cal Raleigh, a guy who plays almost every day. He didn't play today, of course, here on Sunday, but, you know, he plays DH very regularly. He hits somewhere between 2nd and 4th every single day. And I mean, the power is real, right? Like 30 home runs now, which is what he hit in 2023 and 2024. That seems like the floor. He's got 26 home runs today in 63 games. It's unreal. Cal Raleigh, his lowest full season home run total now being 27 in 120 games back in 2022. This is just a dude, like, this is the premier power hitting catcher. Like, forget about Sal Perez, forget about everyone else. This is the catcher with 40 home run upside. He's going to hit 40 this year. Next year, I think we'll be pegging him for at least 25. The batting average is so much better this year for Cal Raleigh. And, like, yeah, some of that comes from a mildly improved line drive rate. He hits a lot of balls in the air, so I expect the batting average to come down just a little bit because, as we've talked about many times, balls hit in the air when they don't leave the yard, they tend to be outs. But he's pulling everything. He's getting that ball up in the air a ton with all that power, hitting the ball harder than he ever has before. 23.4% barrel rate, hard hit rate over 50%. The expected stats are telling you that all these ratios are very well deserved. This is the number 1 catcher, and it's by a lot. You know, not even because, you know, yeah, I guess William Contreras is having a little bit of a disappointing year, but the reality is no catcher has this kind of power. He can have, even if the batting average comes down to 250, 240 even, this is still our number 1 catcher because just that kind of power, this kind of RBI upside. I mean, you just could not be happier if you drafted him, which I did in several places. He just never stops hitting home runs. Even when the strikeouts go up, you know, that rolling rate is never getting that much above 30%. That's really important because that keeps that floor from getting too low in any given 10 to 15 game period. Cal Raleigh is just doing everything you want him to do. He's the number 1 catcher for the rest of the year. He's likely the number 1 catcher coming into next year and probably coming into, you know, 2027. Right? I mean, if he shows anything even close to what he's doing now, that's the level of player we're talking about here.
So being the number 1 catcher and being such a difference maker at that position, kind of leveraging that fantasy manager at the catcher position by so many points above the next guy, or, you know, the league average, or even just a top 5 fantasy catcher. How much value does that add to a team, and how valuable does that make him as a potential sell high? I've had people come to me and say, I could offer Ohtani for Cal Raleigh and not get it accepted. Now, probably talking about Ohtani, just the hitter, so there's a little bit of a caveat there. But, I could offer the most valuable fantasy bat in the game for Cal Raleigh and not have it accepted because of the leverage he provides at that one position. What are your thoughts on that?
I think those people are nuts. I think if someone offered me Shohei Ohtani and I could give away Cal Raleigh to Shohei Ohtani, they're nuts. The replacement level at catcher is not so bad that it's not worth doing that. Here's the thing, though. Cal Raleigh, you should look at Cal Raleigh like you look at Kyle Schwarber right now, which is a top 10 hitter, which is amazing. And like being a catcher does add a little bit of value there. But basically, if someone's offering you a top 10 overall hitter for Cal Raleigh, I think you should do it. Right? That's easy to me. It's easy. Go get that guy. But beyond that, right? If they start off, a top 25 hitter, top 30 hitter, why? That's not really much of an improvement over what you've got. That's really where the difference is to me. I think even if you don't believe in the batting average, the 272 batting average that Cal Raleigh has, it's like, let's be real. You probably don't need to believe in it. You say, I've got a guy who's going to hit 40 home runs, get 100 RBI. If you're not going to give me someone who can provide that kind of value, I don't really need to listen. And that's the same thing you're thinking about with Kyle Schwarber, right? With Kyle Schwarber, you're thinking the same exact thing. You're like, look, if you can't give me a guy who can hit 40 home runs and get 100 RBI, why am I listening? That's the guy I've got, right? Yeah, maybe you'll give me a 2-for-1 or a pitcher that makes it interesting. But we're talking about a top 50, like to make a trade here, you're talking, I need a top 15 to 20 overall player, probably closer to top 15 to really talk about making this deal. So why bother, right? If they're not offering that, which they probably aren't, who cares? Like, okay, thanks. I appreciate the offer, but this guy's really good. I'm going to hold. It's not like this is luck. Look, if expected stats tell you nothing else, it's that this is not luck driven. This is not Cal Raleigh just getting stuff to fall right. You know what I mean? Like, he's actually hitting the ball this hard. He's actually hitting the ball this often. He's actually doing all the things that would make it so that you can hit 260 to 270 with 26 home runs through 63 games. That's what he's actually doing. It's not like, I can't believe, I don't understand why it's happening. I know why it's happening because that's how hard he's hitting the ball. That's how much he's walking. That's how much he's making contact. That's just like how it's happening, right? You don't need to like trick yourself and trying to understand why it's happening. It's because that's how hard he's hitting the ball. With those kind of guys, you hold them unless someone gives you a player who's actually better than that.
Yeah, thank you for talking me off that ledge. I'm not in that situation personally, but I had someone come to me with a situation similar to that, and I was like, the Ohtani owner is out of his mind if he's offering Ohtani for Raleigh, even if it is just Ohtani the hitter. So we'll move on. Jacob Wilson, athletic shortstop, probably the leading AL Rookie of the Year candidate right now. He moves up 14 spots. He's in Tier 9 at number 74 this week. He's been hitting the cover off the ball. He doesn't have quite the power that maybe we want, but still a respectable amount of home runs and a crazy good hit tool. What do we know about Jacob Wilson and what do we like?
So a couple of things. Number one, the ballpark in Sacramento has been more favorable to hitting than I expected coming into the season, even though we all thought it'd be slightly favorable. I think it's been a lot more favorable than we thought. He's got 8 home runs through 62 games. This is not a 20 home run kind of hitter. This is like it's a good version of Luis Arias, right? Who doesn't have exactly the same injury issues. Like, let's be clear. This is not a dude that's played a ton of games in his minor league career. Like, he was healthy for all of 2024, 2023. He was like fairly healthy, but we don't have like a super long track record of pristine health. But I think this is a guy that you should expect to hit somewhere between 280 and 300. A guy who can hit, I think in a normal year, he's gotten a bit of a head start because he's playing in this ballpark that's a lot more friendly than we thought, but somewhere between 15 to 17 home runs in a season, maybe steal 10 bases and hit 300. So in points leagues, this is a premier bat because he never strikes out. He's going to continue to have this like very low strikeout rate, very low walk rate, tons of balls in play. I think if you're in a roto league, you're like, okay, this is way more than empty average, but also we're not, as of now, he's been like a top 15 batter so far on the season. Like, it's very hard to stay this high, especially when you're a guy like him who just spins the BABIP wheel as often as he does. Look, he's always had a high BABIP. That's because he hits a ton of line drives. But I think, when you hit this many ground balls, even with like a 22% ground ball or a 22% line drive rate, I think the batting average is going to drop down just a little bit from that 370, maybe something closer to 300, which makes him a very good hitter and more like a top 50 to 75 hitter than a top 15. But still, that's a very valuable hitter, especially if you've been needing ratios or you're just needing a guy who's very steady. This is probably the best he's going to possibly be, but that doesn't mean he's not good. Right? I think sometimes people think that when I say, oh, this is better, this is way better than he really is, that means I think he's not good. No, he is very good. It's just, it's going to be a little bit more empty of an average, a little bit more, hopefully he gets more runs hitting near the top of this order on this very uneven Athletics lineup. But this is a guy who I think can be a top 50 to 75 hitter, but not so much a top 15 hitter rest of the way.
We'll move on to a guy who was actually mentioned in the Fallers a couple weeks ago. And has kind of turned things around in the past few weeks. He's in tier 11, number 92 this week. He's up 12 spots. That's Kansas City Royals first baseman Vinny Pasquantino. I don't know if he feels the heat of Jack Caglione on his heels or if he's just kind of figured things out, but he's certainly been better the past couple of weeks. What do you like about the Pasquatch?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, the strikeouts have come way, way down. He was striking out way too much to start the year. That strikeout rate really since about like halfway through last month has been way, 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 way down, making a ton more contact. Look, the power, he's got 4 home runs. Well, technically he has 6 home runs in May. He's going to be this guy who hits like somewhere between 4 and 6 home runs in a month. I think he's like his total upside at home runs is probably closer to 20 than it is 25 or 30. But he should be hitting for a high batting average. He should be putting a ton of balls in play. And now what we've seen is that batting average creep up. So I think he can end the season being a guy who hits like 22 home runs, but also bats 270 with a decent number of RBI and runs scored, especially as this Royals offense really finds its way. It had been really, really, really dreary for the first month and a half, 2 months of the season. It's really picking up. I think Pasquantino is a guy who should just get set into your first base spot and locked in. That's just kind of what he is, especially with both the offense improving and him just getting rid of the strikeouts. So strikeouts were the thing that worried me. That's what pulled him down on the list. With those going away, it's like, okay, this is what I thought Pasquantino could be, and that's a top 75 hitter.
We'll touch on another power bat that has climbed the list the past couple of weeks. He's in tier 13, 117th overall, up 18 spots this week. And that's the Los Angeles Dodgers third baseman, Max Muncy. Now, an interesting thing about Muncy, he had astigmatism. He's got glasses now. And since, donning those glasses for games, his swing value, like all of his swing decisions, all of his contact metrics, have been on a pretty consistent rise from that point on. Correlation, causation, what do you think?
It's an interesting narrative. None of his rolling chart stuff suggests that what he's doing now is very different than what we saw in 2023, 2024. It's all kind of the same stuff. So, hey, maybe that's a big deal and it'll make him create a hot streak that's more than what we saw in the last several seasons. But even if it doesn't, what it means is he's out of that basement. He's got a great spot in a very, very strong lineup. From there is all you really need to know about Max Muncy. That, yeah, most of the time he's like sort of this middling hitter, but he's capable of these hot streaks that carry fantasy teams. We've seen him with, WRC pluses over the last couple of years. When you look at these 15-game rolling charts, he's capable of being just like a truly elite hitter for fairly extended periods thanks to all the walks, especially if you're an OBP league. You should be just setting him and forgetting him. In an average league, look, take the hit at average and take the power, take the RBI that should come from being this offense, and just ignore the stigmatism part. Like, it's a cool narrative, but like in reality, he could just be the guy he's been for the last several seasons and be very useful to you for fantasy.
We'll take a short break. We'll be back with the fallers for Scott's top 150 hitters list after this. All right. Gunnar, Corey Seager. I'm going to mention Torkelson just because he came down 9 spots, and I think that's blasphemy. Luis Robert and then Ben Rice are the guys that I have here.
It hurt me so much.
I figured it, especially after talking so much Tigers last week with Huth too.
It's a raw wound you're picking at, but I'll find a way. I'll get through it.
That's all right. I'll get my salt. I can't. All right.
Just crank that. You just grind it over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just say when. Say when. Say when. Welcome back to Hacks and Jacks. I'm Brett Ford here with Scott Chu. We're digging into Scott's top 150 hitters list. We're taking a look at some of the guys who have fallen down the ranks from last week to this week. And Scott, we start in Baltimore of all places, and I'm not thrilled to go there, of course, but shortstop Gunnar Henderson, he started the season in tier 2. Now he's down to tier 4, number 27 overall. He's down 6 spots this week. And the Orioles need him and he isn't producing. What's going on?
So that's sort of the problem with Gunnar Henderson, right? It's, with some of these guys, like, we could talk about Spencer Torkelson, who I know you want me to talk about because he did fall down in the list, and it hurts me, and it's a very raw wound still. It's very fresh, and you like twisting that salt grinder right on the top of it, and that's fine. I appreciate that. I need that realism to keep me going. But at least for him, the decision-making remains strong. Some of the other stuff has fallen off, but I think that can come back. Had a home run this weekend. Spencer Torkelson probably going to be fine as long as he keeps making the right decisions, right? As long as he torques, he will bork, right? Like, that's what I think about Spencer Torkelson. The problem with Gunnar Henderson is, like, I don't really know what to hang my head on to say, like, oh yeah, this is why it's coming back. All of it's down. All of it's not really working. So what we're relying on is this past show of skill, which isn't nothing, right? That doesn't mean it's totally fake. It just means that all I can really hang my head on is he's mostly hitting the ball hard, and he's mostly shown us in the past that he can be a top 10 level hitter in baseball. But otherwise with Gunnar Henderson, it's kind of like, well, like, we believe in you because you've done it before, but not because you're doing like stuff that makes it look like you can do it right now. Like the average X of, if you just look at since like the middle of May, it's only 2 home runs. Yeah, it's like 4 stolen bases, like 5 RBI in his last 95 plate appearances. Like, that's not going to cut it. You really wonder, like, he's slugging 357 in his last 95 plate appearances. So it makes you wonder, like, look, it's not like what the problem is it's not bad luck. It's not, slightly unfortunate outcomes. It's just like he's not as good, right? Which is fine. It doesn't mean he can't be as good as he was in the past. But there's not this light at the end of the tunnel where it's like, oh, well, he's still making the right decisions. Oh, he's still showing the power. He's not really doing any of that stuff. So he could rebound. But also, I just traded him straight up for Jordan, even though I don't really know when Jordan's coming back in another league. And I felt pretty good about it because at least Jordan, I feel a little bit better about being the level of hitter I expected him to be coming into the season. Whereas with Gunnar, I might be ready to just start recalibrating my expectations, say this is a pretty good hitter instead of a great one.
Yeah, and I pulled up his rolling charts now. I'm looking at Process Plus, and it's just average. Like, it's just been average this year.
Exactly. There's not like this. So when you look at Torkelson's Process Plus, you're like, well, look, the decision making has stayed incredibly consistent, above average. I know we can hit the ball hard. I know we can make decent contact, I think it'll all come back as long as he's swinging at the right stuff. With Gunnar, you're just like, you're not really doing any of the things that made you so exciting not 9 months ago. So what do I do now? Right? Like, it sounds very dismissive, and I don't want it to be dismissive. I think there's still elite talent in this player. It's just there's not this thing you can say like, well, as long as he keeps doing this, it'll turn around. When I look at Torque, I can say as long as he keeps making good decisions, I think it'll turn around. With Gunnar, I'm just like, well, if he figures out who he used to be, he'll turn around, right? That's like a different ask than saying like, oh, well, as long as he keeps doing this thing he's already doing, it'll be okay. I'm not really asking Gunnar Henderson to do that. I'm asking him to do more than that, which is go be someone you haven't been all season long. That's scary to me, and that's why I'm down on him a little bit.
Oh, as an Orioles fan, I certainly don't like to hear it, but I definitely understand it after watching pretty much every game.
To be fair, do you like hearing anything about what's happened here in 2025 as an Orioles fan? Like, let's be real. The entire season has just been bad news, like really across the board. I'm not trying to just rag on you. I'm just saying, like, this is not worse news than you've been getting since the start of the year.
Jackson Holiday is fun to watch.
I really hope, like, I know I said it last week. So again, this week, he's got the tools to win that leadoff job and keep it. He's striking out a little bit too much in the early goings of having this leadoff role. But that's where his premier upside is. That's a position, like, that's a spot both me and Kyle Bland think he can really lock in and become a high level fantasy producer. There's just a few bumps along the road as of right now, but God, I think he can get there. I think Jackson Holiday is going to be a guy who's just going to lock into that number one spot, and he could be there for a decade.
Well, we'll move out of Baltimore, and I'm not sure which one of us was holding the salt grinder during that conversation, but we'll move on. We'll move on out of Baltimore, and we'll go to the Texas Rangers. Stay at shortstop, where Corey Seager is also fallen this week. He's in tier 6, down to 49 overall, down 9 spots this week. Texas Rangers, kind of another team that have underachieved across the board this season, at least offensively.
Again.
Yeah, again, right, exactly. And Seager, kind of falling a little bit this week. What's going on with Corey?
So, like, long term, and I talked about this earlier. If you're one of the degenerates that can't stop listening about fantasy baseball, I was on Sirius XM earlier today on Sunday at about 11:30. Talked about Corey Seager. The rolling charts tell you this is a normal slump for Corey Seager. He's going to bounce out of this. You shouldn't really bench him. You shouldn't really do anything. But the injury risk plus the slump makes him slightly less attractive. So that moves him down the list. Like, the thing is, so when I move a guy from, like, I'll just make up random numbers from like 30 to 39, the problem is that's totally unactionable for you guys, right? Like, there's nothing really to do about it. It's just like, I guess if I'm one of the 6 people that got offered a trade with players of this caliber and dropping 9 spots would have changed my opinion about that trade in the last week, I guess I'll do something. But that's like so few of you, right? Like, in reality, this was like a move that just went from like, I thought he was really good, and now I still think he's really good, but also like slightly less good than maybe a couple other guys in the same range. So don't take it too far. But I think in Texas, the biggest story is Marcus Semien, who, as you all know, I've written off all season long. He's had an amazing week. I mean, as recently as a week ago today, last Sunday, June 1st, he was batting 8th. He's up to 4th again. He's hitting a bunch of home runs. Here's my fear. My fear is that Marcus Semien is having a really good week, and he might even have a really good 2 weeks. And then he'll go back to being what he was for the first 200 something plate appearances of the season. And the reason that's scary is if this is all you get, and then you have to go through another 200 plate appearances of a well below average player, that means Marcus Semien is no better than most of the league. And I think that he very well could be better than that. And what I really want to be true is that whatever it was that was bothering him to the first 220 plate appearances of the season is behind him. The problem is, I'm not sure I believe that yet, because those 220 plate appearances match the last 400 plate appearances from the season before, to be quite frank. And so he's been bad a lot more than he's been good. And if all you get is this short little burst of like 2 or 3 weeks of production and he goes back down, that means rostering him this whole time has been net negative. In fact, if you've rostered him from the start of the season till now, what you've had is a player who's just outside the top 300 overall in value, according to the Fangraphs player rater. So yes, no one's dropping him now. You can't really try to trade him because I'm not sure you're going to find any value, but this hot streak either needs to last another week or two, or at the very least, his next slump needs to be very, very short for me to really buy in and say, yes, this is a top 100 player rest of the way. He's going to be on the hitter list in this coming version because there's certainly a possibility that he goes back to being a top 100 caliber hitter, which means you should be ranked in the top 150. But there's still enough fear from me that this is the peak and we only see it for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, once or twice more for the remainder of the season, that it's no longer that, like, second base isn't deep, but you don't need to hold on a guy who's only going to be that relevant for 6 total weeks, right? Like, that's really what my fear is here. And he's someone who, again, I don't think you're going to be able to trade him for anything. I don't think anyone's really trying to go buy him, but hey, if they are, you should go do it. If you can get a top 100 guy on my hitter list for Marcus Semien, I think you should smash the accept button immediately and not really think about it. But if you can't, go ahead and ride this wave. And once it stops, go find somebody else.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm in a situation where my second base position in one of my leagues is extremely weak. I've been struggling to fill it, streaming guys like Dylan Moore and, trying to fill the gap, and it's just not working. So I might be in a situation where I'm streaming Marcus Semien, but very short leash as far as how long I keep him on the roster, how long he stays in the starting lineup. But he's definitely something I'm willing to take a risk on, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, that's what makes the most sense. Like, thinking of Marcus Semien as more than Dylan Moore, is more than Andres Jimenez, is more than these other guys who have flashed potential. That's the mistake. It's thinking that he's so much better than them. Yes, we thought that not 2 or 3 months ago. And the conservative fantasy analyst in me has usually been like, oh, but we thought this guy was good. Marcus Semien's different. This guy's got 1,000,000 miles on those tires, right? They are bald. They are NASCAR tires, what he's got left. Like, you should think of him the same as a Dylan Moore, the same as a Jorge Polanco, right? As a guy who is, if he had 2 bad weeks, let him go, right? But for now, go ahead and ride it. The only people that are playing this wrong are the people that rostered Marcus Semien from day one till now, because they've had the worst second base production in their league. Right? Like, that's the wrong play. The right play is if you would let him go. And then, okay, he had a couple good games. Maybe I think he's coming back. Now I'll go grab him. And if it doesn't work out, I'll let him go and go grab someone else. Because if you've been streaming, you've been doing better than the 29th ranked second baseman on the season so far. Right? Unless you're just so inept at streaming. Right? But like, you've been doing better than that. And that's the thing to keep in mind. You shouldn't be thinking like, oh, I can't believe I let him go. He's been so good for the last 2 weeks. Yeah, but if you held him the whole time, you have the number 29 second baseman in a 12-team league. That's the wrong number, right? You don't want the guy whose number starts with a 2. You don't want the guy whose rank starts with a 2. You want it to start with a 0 or a 1, right? Which you probably could have streamed up until now.
Yeah. Easy for us to say if we haven't spent the draft capital on it, right? But at this point of the season, it doesn't matter where you draft.
What do you get it back? Like, what does it turn into, like money in your pile? Like, it doesn't do it. Like, the draft capital's gone. You lost it the day of the draft, right? It's all gone. None of it comes back. You don't do it because of the draft capital. You say, oh, well, because I think my talent evaluation was good. And that's fine. You held on to the talent evaluation, and eventually the talent evaluation fell off too. That's when you cut him. Not because of the draft capital slowly dwindled. It's not a friggin' stock price, right? You can't cash it out. That's the thing. All these people that compare it to stocks, it doesn't work that way, because stocks you can cash out. Fantasy baseball players, you cut. That's it. That's what you get. You get nothing, right? You don't sell at a price. You get nothing, right? So like, you let him go for nothing. And it was like the nothing was valuable to you because 0 is better than what he did for the first whatever weeks of the season, right? Getting nothing there, having a blank spot that was better than what Marcus Semien did up until like May 25th, right? That's why you cut him. Not because like, oh, well, I finally thought the draft capital got spent. The draft capital was spent the moment you drafted him. It was gone. You were never getting it back. Anyone who's like, oh, I'm doing it because of the draft capital. Draft capital means nothing. The research you did, if you thought there was a valuable player there, hold on to that. But the draft capital, it doesn't matter. It's gone. It was gone the moment you spent it.
That reminded me of Willy Wonka telling Charlie that you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
I mean, exactly like good day, sir. If you held on, if you've been holding on to Marcus Semien this whole time in a 12-team league, I'm sorry, but you're still at a net loss. You'll be at a net loss even if he's this good for 2 more weeks. Right? It doesn't matter. You're still at a net loss because you could have gotten something better for the short time and let him sit on the wire and then picked him up when you started doing good again. That was what you should have done.
All right. Well, now that I've got you good and fired up, let's talk about Spencer Torkelson dropping 9 spots to 58th overall in Tier 7. You're muted, Scott.
Why would you do this to me? Why? Just like what, like, because you put the knife in, you thought, oh, I know it would be fun. Twist it. Let's just twist it a little bit. So with Spencer Torkelson, again, the decision-making remains strong. The power is pretty good. It's fallen off the last 300 plate appearances. I do think it'll come back. What matters is that Spencer Torkelson keeps making the right decisions. The big difference with Spencer Torkelson is we need him to avoid the complete falling off the cliff and never coming back that he did in 2024, right? The way he avoids that is strong decision-making, which lets him continue to say, okay, all I need to work on is when I make contact, I drive the ball. I think he's going to do that. I think Spencer Torkelson's a great guy to just kind of hold. I said that. I said just as much when I was on SiriusXM earlier today. I'll say it now, except now when I say it in this quiet tone because I'm trying not to scream at you for baiting me to become angry about Spencer Torkelson because I think everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be good.
Well, Torkelson, I will say you put me on Torkelson early enough that I was able to get him in several different places across my league. So I do thank you for that. And I am holding as well. So
you're welcome.
We'll move on to Chicago White Sox outfielder Luis Robert Jr., Tier 11, 95th overall. He's down 31 spots. It was a good run, Scott.
Yeah, moving down to 7th in the order matters, right? Even when you're stealing as many bases he has. Do I think you should cut him? No. Right? Like, I get it. He's been negative. But let's be clear. As of today, he's the number 117 batter, which means in pretty much every format, that's still a rosterable batter. And all of that is coming from those stolen bases. And as long as you're getting the stolen bases, I would say, look, he's got 21 through 57 games. He should probably end the season with like 40. If you're willing to roster any other rabbit, I would roster the rabbit who also has power upside. And that's Luis Robert Jr. So what I've taken to calling him in my mind is, look, this is the premier rabbit because of the upside he offers across the board. Yes, I know he's hitting 181 right now, but he's also walking 10% of the time. Like, that's cool, right? Like it's, you know, it dipped for a while, but it's kind of coming back. There's a lot of upside across the board. And as long as he keeps walking a decent amount, he could be a 4, you know, look, even if the power doesn't really get better than it is now, you're talking about a 15 home run, 40 stolen base guy. You would have drafted that anyway, really, no matter what the batting average was. Sure, you spent more draft capital than you hoped, but like I just ranted about, who cares? That money is gone. You're never getting it back. The fact is, you're still getting a guy that was very draftable. So why not just hold and see what happens?
We'll move on to Tier 14. Number 128 overall, down 23 spots. It's New York first baseman Ben Rice. And we talked about Rice kind of in that lump of first baseman with Torkelson and Soderstrom. But really the main difference with Rice is that, like you mentioned earlier in the pod, he might be out of a job here soon.
So here's the thing. And like, I've actually been using it in reference to Addison Barger, who's been quite good. The thing is, having red sliders on your StatCast page is not enough to say this is a fantasy bat you must hold, because playing time is a thing, right? And so Ben Rice already struggling to get playing time because he can only play first base and DH. He's not going to go back behind the dish, because if he was going to go back behind the dish, they would have done it by now, surely. They like Paul Goldschmidt playing first base, and so they've had him DH. He's DH'd quite a bit, right? He's DH'd 6 times in the last 7 games, and that's really cool. The problem is with that, Giancarlo Stanton coming back, and he's going to DH a ton, because like, you want a dude with red slider bars? That's Giancarlo effing Stanton. That's what he does. He hits the ball super, super hard every time he touches it. So with Ben Rice, what you're saying is like, okay, so now he's going to be a part-time DH only with maybe some first base at bats. Like, yeah, sure. He did some like fielding in another position. None of that matters. As of right now, what you have is a guy who's quite droppable in 12-team leagues because he doesn't play enough and his playing time is projected downward. Yes, he's been extremely unlucky, and his expected stats are much better than his real ones. And I think that there's a real opportunity for Ben Rice to be a plus hitter in terms of like raw talent, in terms of raw power, in terms of barrel rate, all those things. He is as good or better than Torkelson, as good or better than Soderstrom. But what he doesn't have is the same opportunity as those guys. And that means you need a shorter leash. You need a quicker trigger on letting Ben Rice go. Because if the Yankees are only going to play him 3 or 4 times a week, that means that just basically makes him not that relevant in 12-teamers, which is unfortunate, again, because this dude can absolutely rocket the ball every time he touches it. But in reality, they're not going to let him do that enough that it's valuable in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, Rice is one of those guys that I've got flagged in all my leagues as like I'm interested in, because I think he's a prime candidate to be shipped out of New York for pitching. I think he's one of the guys that the Yankees could package to acquire another, elite arm for a playoff run. So he's a guy that I would love to see moved at the deadline to get more playing time, like you're talking about.
Like, if the Astros aren't going to go and get Luis Robert Jr., Victor Caratini is a terrible DH. Christian Walker's not been the first baseman that they've been expecting. Ben Rice is a perfect fit for this team. He gives them a left-handed power bat that they severely lack. It'd be an amazing move for them. Yeah, sure, the Crawford boxes are better for right-handed hitters, but if Ben Rice landed in like Houston, he'd have everyday playing time. He would be a top 100 hitter immediately.
Yeah, I was actually thinking Seattle. Similar situation. I mean, Rowdy Tellez isn't exactly, a game changer out there. So, put him in Seattle. Now, granted, the ballpark's not as good, but
that's the nicest thing anyone said about Rowdy Tellez in 3 years. I mean, like, again, it's a team that could just really use a left-handed power hitter, because their other lefties are either not lefties, they're switches. But even then, who's their best power hitting lefty? Miles Mastrobuoni, right? Rowdy Tellez and switch hitting Jorge Polanco. Get the heck out of here. Ben Rice, great fit for them. They've got some young pitchers they could move anywhere else. Like, yes, Yankee Stadium is a great place to be a left-handed power hitter, but this dude hits the ball 95 miles an hour. He doesn't need a short porch. He just needs a porch that he can hit at regularly, right? He doesn't need it to be close. It could be 400 feet away. He's got enough power that it doesn't really make a difference. So just like, let him hit.
Well, that about does it for the fallers this week. Anybody on the taxi squad that you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
He's actually not even on the taxi squad right now. I think I even removed him from the injured list. The guy that's going to be the feature of the next hitter list, again, Christian Encarnacion Strand. I know we mentioned it before. He was hitting really, really well in the minors when he came up. He's got a home run basically in every game that he's been up. He's a guy who they've inserted into the middle of the lineup, someone that you should be adding right now before anyone notices. So Christian Encarnacion Strand, yeah, it may blow up in your face, but whatever, who cares? Go ahead and go for it. See if you can get a power hitting guy who should be third base eligible, even in the the deeper formats within, I don't know, a week or two, right? He hit another home run today on Sunday. That's a guy who I'm really paying attention to. Another guy I'm really kind of paying attention to, maybe doesn't have the same power output, but Otto Lopez been hitting in the middle. Like he's hit like first through third the last 4 games for the Miami Marlins. He's hitting pretty well. That's a guy who, especially in like deeper leagues where you need volume, especially in the middle infield, Otto Lopez, who's been somewhat of a disappointment. He's really kind of stepped it up. I think he's someone you should look at, see what you can kind of get for him. What you might have to pay to go get him. That's a big one. I think if someone is very frustrated with Riley Green because of the recent strikeouts, you heard me and Trevor talk about it last week on a pod. Riley Green's going to be an absolute stud. These strikeouts are coming because the adjustments he needs to make with that severe uppercut swing. He's someone you really need to be after. I think you should be absolutely just chomping at the bit to get Riley Green on your team. He had some good hits today. He's going to clean up the holes in that swing. He's going to be a very, very special player. So go ahead and go after him. And that, even with that severe uppercut. And then finally, I think the guy who, if I'm in a dynasty league, I'm kind of selling right now is, and it feels weird because it almost feels like I'm selling low, but Marcelo Mayer. I think what I really want to say about Marcelo Mayer, I'm sorry, it's not so much that you need to sell. He's been fine when he's played. But don't trust managers. They lie to you. They don't give a crap about you or your feelings. They don't care about any of those things. They're like, oh yeah, Marcelo Mayer is going to play most days for us. They're going to find it. We're going to find a way to get him in the lineup. They lied. They're not doing that at all. He plays third base basically exclusively and not most of the time. Pretty much just against righties. And I don't think they're really going to change anything about it. Because like, oh, well, we'll just play Abraham Toro the other days. Which like, who cares? Like, yeah, he can get hot for a week or two, but like, don't trust me. Let me repeat. It's not really about Marcelo Mayer. It's about not trusting managers. They said that Hyun Kim was going to play very often, and he didn't. They said Marcelo Mayer was going to play often, and they didn't. They called up Jordan Lawler to say, oh, yeah, we're going to play him, and they didn't. Right? Look at the lineup. Trust the openings you see, not what the managers say. They are dirty, dirty liars, and it doesn't hurt. Like, they feel good about it. They like hurting your feelings. Just like make that assumption and go from there.
Well, a name that I'm keeping an eye out for, he's not even in the major leagues yet, but on the same day that the Giants promoted this player to AAA, they DFA'd their starting first baseman, Lamonte Wade, who has now been acquired by the Los Angeles Angels. Bryce Eldridge in the Giants farm system is basically the next in line to be promoted to the major leagues. The Giants signed Dominic Smith to play first base in the meantime. I can't imagine that's a long-term plan. I'd be shocked if it lasts more than a few weeks before Eldridge is promoted and is the everyday first baseman in San Francisco. So that's a name that I'm targeting and pretty excited about based on what I've seen in prospect circles. I'm not a huge prospects guy, but I know the Pitcher List Discord is buzzing about Bryce Eldridge.
So actually he was like number 300 on the list, the hitter list coming into the season. Like before I switched to 150, like very last one, he was at the very back of the list as a guy who could be very interesting if he made the major leagues. I think, they recently got Gerard Encarnacion back, but he's a righty. He's all power, big swing and miss issues, which Bryce Eldridge has a little bit, but you're right. Dom Smith is a guy who every year for about 2 or 3 weeks, we're like, I wonder if this team fixed him. I wonder if they turned him into something more than just like a very deep OBP league guy. And for like a week, we fool ourselves into thinking like they did that. And then afterwards, like, oh yeah, all he can really do is walk and hit occasional home runs and not really be all that interesting for general fantasy, which means Bryce Eldridge is going to get a shot here this summer to be with the Giants. I think he can take that job and run with it. I think Wilmer Flores continues to like sort of play on borrowed time, which will open up, if the DH spot is open, that's even more potential at bats for Bryce Eldridge. I think he is a guy who in deep leagues, dynasty leagues, you should be scooping up and just seeing what happens, because there's huge power here, even in a very difficult park to hit home runs in, like they've got over by the Bay. Bryce Eldridge is a guy who's got more than enough power to hit the ball out of that park and plop it in to the water by all those kayaks. I think there's a lot of good things that can happen there. So keep an eye on him. Again, it's regular 12 teamers. You don't really care that much yet, but that's a very much a watch list guy when he gets called up. See if he goes and blasts a couple dingers.
Yeah, when your main competition for playing time is a poor man's Carlos Santana, you should be okay.
Look, we love Wilmer Flores. We love the passion he plays for the game. I mean, he cried leaving the Mets, right? Mr. Met wouldn't cry leaving the Mets, and Wilmer Flores did. So like, I appreciate that about him. But like, when your competition is Wilmer Flores and Dom Smith and you're under the age of 30, things look pretty good. Like that's an open job that could be taken.
Well, that's a wrap for Hacks and Jacks this week. Scott, tell them where they can find you and your work.
I've been pretty good about posting on social media now. Those of you who go on the site may have noticed we no longer allow comments on the site. That's because too many people have made that into sort of a negative sharing place. So we don't have comments on the Pitcher List site anymore, but you can find me over on Blue Sky, scottchu.pitcherlist.com. You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever, at If the Chu Fits, If the CHU Fits. I'm trying to post there a lot more regularly. You can also find me on Reddit. Of course, you can message me directly on Reddit. You can go to Reddit and look for the AMA. I actually, that's from Monday really through until people stop messaging me on it. So on Friday, or between noon and 1, I'll start the AMA. Me and a couple other guys from the site will go on there and answer pretty much every question we get. There's at least 100 questions that gets answered. One of them is probably yours. And if it's not, go ahead and ask your own. We'll answer it for you. So those are really good places to find me and engage with me now that you can no longer do that in the comments.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. I'm Brett Ford. Find me at Fade That Man on Twitter and X. And of course, in the Pitcher List Discord, and tuning in to playback every now and then as well. We'll see you all on the flip side. Thanks for tuning in. This has been a wonderful episode of Hacks and Jacks. See ya.